Hi friends. Oh, it is so good to see you guys today. Hello, I am Melissa, and today's video I am going to talk about more of the teenage emotions with teenagers. And I apologize I didn't get a video out last weekend. Maybe I should kind of tie that into the teenage grief. We still have two teenagers at home, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old, and life can just take over, and not able to make a video the way I would like to, all that good stuff. So, I was visiting with my son a couple weeks ago, and it just reminded me a lot of how teenagers in grief, they go through so much of the same similar initial symptoms that we do too, teenage shock. Yeah, I got my notes, guys. It's just, that is just what it is. They have shock too, and our two youngest children were murdered 4 years ago. And so Noah was 7 and Sophia was 5. So our teenagers, their hearts are grieving, very much so. So I kind of was just, wanted to talk about inside of the teenager's heart. So pretty much a lot of what I'm referring to and talking to about today is inside their heart. The previous video I was talking about how a teenager's personal history of loss can influence how they view and approach life, and relationships. Which, if we have an understanding of the teenager's past, it does help us to be able to relate to them today in the present. So yeah, this video, the next several videos, I was just gonna kind of discuss, the journey of the inside of the hurting teen's heart, And when this loss hit our family, the initial response for our teenagers was shock. I think that's probably a number one initial response to any kind of traumatic loss, any kind of major traumatic death. They are stunned. They were shocked and they were stunned. Some of the things that, some of the questions that they were saying with inside of their heart were things like, this can't be happening. This is a bad dream. How? Why? No, this can't be real. I feel like my brain is on fire. The heat is spreading down my neck into my chest. I'm dizzy. I'm not breathing. I can't breathe. So these are some of the things that these teenagers feel. I think I'm going to be sick. I close my eyes. I don't want to see anything or anyone. I just want to have to blot this out. Then it will be all over. Everything will be okay. I can feel the tears coming, welling up from deep inside. Do I hold it in? Do I dare let it out? I gasp and feel myself beginning to sob. Another thought is I cry and scream, but I can't hear it. It's like I'm deaf, blind, and dumb all at the same time. Everything is dark. I feel like I'm floating. I don't want to open my eyes. Another one feels, I want to keep my eyes closed forever. I'm going to be sick. And then they tell themselves, breathe, Melissa. Breathe, Hannah. Breathe, Elijah. I kind of just we have to tell ourselves to breathe. We think, what? Dead? Yeah, right. I just talked to you. I just saw you last night. How can you be dead? Nope, this is wrong. A mistake, some kind of sick joke. And then another one describes it as my muscles tighten. My face does. The tension in my shoulders, neck, and head is growing. I notice I'm clenching my fists. Another one thinks my thoughts stop. My brain isn't working. It's like someone smacked me in the chest with a baseball bat. My diaphragm is paralyzed. It's like trying to breathe underwater. There is no air in the room. I can't move. You're dead? no, this cannot be real. You know, life, we're used to it, right? We're used to it. We expect to wake up, teenagers, they expect to wake up, yawn, stretch, open their eyes to the same world that they went to sleep in, okay? They get up, they move, they go through the motions, engaging in their routine, like brushing their teeth, taking a shower, eating, getting dressed, sometimes breakfast. You know, they see colors and objects and people, you know, nature, you know, they see it. They can hear sounds and voices in their home and outside. They're expecting their brains to function, their hearts to beat, and their lungs to draw breath, right? All of these things. We expect to wake up and live in the same world we did yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. You know? But death changes all that. It does. It changes all of that. You know, suddenly the world has been altered. Noah and Sophia are missing. And Malik is missing too. You know, Malik is now in prison for 96 years. Don't think he's returning to our home. You know, and the ripple effects touch everything in the teen's life, you know? So, and for those that don't know Noah or Sophia or even knew Malik, life continues on just as much as before, right? And that includes a gigantic chunk of the teenager's personal life. A lot of the teenager's life, half of their life, were people that were just connected to them, right? Whether it was their teacher, their boss, their friend. And they didn't necessarily come into our home to meet their siblings, to meet Noah and Sophia, who were much younger than them. Obviously, their best friends did, families of our church and those things, you know. But if you think about it, teenagers have a lot of friends at school that we've never even met as their parents, right? And a lot of different associates. If they have a job, they have coworkers we've never met, bosses we've never met, and they interact with these people. They have conversations with these people all the time, right? They're doing life with other people besides just mom and dad as a teenager. They're building their own lives. So then in this situation here, where their little brother and sister were murdered, there is just a chunk of our teenagers' lives where those people have just, their lives weren't affected by this. Their lives were not affected at all. And it went on as normal. And so our teenagers are like in this weird way operating in these two different types of worlds here, you know, the grieving world and then the non-grieving world. And then of their age. I mean, how many 16-year-olds are really ready to support another 16-year-old in heavy grief? You know, their world is unchanged, you know, and the teenagers see it. They see that they live, work, play, and relate just as much as they did before, you know, just as they did yesterday, last week, and last year, you know. But for the family and friends of Noah and Sophia and Malik, our lives will never be the same again. And encountering death is like entering some type of alternative universe. You know, death is powerful and it is quick. You know, it's devastating, you know, and in an instant, our world is changed. Yeah, the teen feels broken and shattered even. They feel that too. They do, you know, and they stand motionless in the center of what used to be their life. If you think about it, you know, blinking, hoping against hope that the scene around them will change and somehow will go back to what it was before. You know, shoot, I do that, you know, but it doesn't, you know. And we're just constantly thinking, how can this be? How did this happen? Why? These unanswered questions that we're like, in a way, forced to live with, have to adjust to live with. And if an answer does come, or we try to create an answer, you know, how successful do we, or how well, all of that, it doesn't. None of it sits well. You know, teens are shocked stunned. Their hearts have been hit too. Their world is cracked. Their souls are cracking too. You know, shaking. Yeah, their souls are shaking too. Loss, most definitely, you guys. It alters lives and relationships. It alters them. You know, we are relational creatures. You know, we come out of the womb screaming to have our needs met. And we depend on those around us to do it, right? Don't we? So, you know, we learn and we grow in the presence of other people, connecting and attaching as we go. You know, the teenagers are too. They didn't stop because they became teenager. If not, how much more so are they growing and attaching themselves to people as they go in their teenage journey? You know, our life becomes like a web of relationships, you know, that form the basis of who we are, of who we think we are. You know, teenagers are still discovering the world and who they are in it. You know, just like we kind of tell them, you know, bad company can corrupt good behavior. You know, so yeah, it shapes these teenagers. And as they were growing, they had a younger brother and sister who lived at home and an older brother. That was all part of their identity as they were growing, and they had attached themselves to each other. You know, the teenager's sense of identity is powerfully linked to the people and influences around them. And I think if we remember as teenagers how powerfully we were influenced, you know, by the people and other influences around us, how much that shaped our identity. You know, it did. And when someone near them is removed, like their brother and sister were, their whole world, their whole being shakes. Okay? The teen's world is their heart home. You know, it really is. If you just think about it, the teenager's life, it's their whole heart world, you know, their heart home. You know, teenagers, they do everything. It's all or nothing with these guys, isn't it? They go from one extreme to another and they put their whole heart into either extreme. You know, so this is where their heart home, it's where they do life at, you know. This is where they do life with the people around them, you know, like I said, family, friends, classmates, church family, co-workers, neighbors, and even their enemies. So when someone in their heart home is taken or leaves, it can throw everything into confusion. And at first, they're shocked and stunned, even immobilized inside. Just how we felt too, you know? And the Lord is letting me know, you can make a difference. As their mother, I can make a difference. You know? And prayer is the most powerful resource and weapon we have as their mother. It most certainly is. You know, and prayer links us to God. God knows these teenagers' hearts. He knows the struggles within their hearts. He knows the unbelief they are just wrestling with. Because yes, my teenagers wrestle with unbelief. They are having a very difficult time believing in the Lord Jesus. It is difficult for them at their ages to see the goodness of God in the face of so much evil. Naturally so. Us adults can barely grasp it. Us adults are dealing with those challenges of a good God in the face of so much evil. So yeah, I imagine I probably would have been the same thing at 16 and 18. And they were 14 and 12 when their brother and sister were killed. You know? And yeah, you know, so and holding on to my belief that God is going to help them in their unbelief. You know, Jesus is the author of their faith, not me, and he's the perfecter of their faith, not me. That's really hard, though, as a mother, because I just want so much for them to know the Lord personally. And yeah, but they're struggling, and they're teenagers, and they are struggling with unbelief, and it's a big challenge for them right now, even though they've known the Lord their whole lives, but they're teenagers now, and they can think for themselves now, and make their own choices for themselves, and they get to decide for themselves what they want to believe in, So in grief, it just complicates so much. I mean, I've noticed and have seen that teenagers, we struggle with our own religion and our belief naturally anyways, outside of trauma, outside of grief. You don't need grief and trauma to come into a teenager's world for them to want to question the religion that they've been shown their whole lives, or they begin to start to doubt it or want to explore some things on their own accord. So if you can just even begin to imagine that same teenager who does those things anyways, naturally, to be one that's in heavy grief, heavy grief, under PTSD and trauma and depression. Yeah, it's hard. Very much a challenge. Very much so, And the Lord, I was just kind of thinking, well, how do I make a difference? How? Well, of course, prayer. Well, not of course, but for sure prayer came right away. The Lord said, you keep talking to me, keep communicating to me about your teenagers, about your concerns for them, and all of that, the worries, the frustrations, the joys, all of it, just keep talking to him, trusting that he hears me, trusting in his love for our teenagers that will not fail them. And then he's been showing me, just make it my primary goal to enter their world and just love them right there. Like, I can't take them out of that world, but I can go into it and just meet them right there and love on them there. We just love people to Jesus. We love them to God. Intimidation and fear will never work. Bargaining, all of those things, and the same with grief. I cannot take their grief away from them as much as I desire to. But then that would mean we'd have Noah and Sophia living with us and alive, and Malik as well. And then I'm not able to do that. I can't bring the dead back to life. So my goal is to love Elijah and Hannah. My target is not to fix this, rescue them, or make this go away, all of which are impossible. And of course, the mother in me wants to fix it. Don't get me wrong. The mother in me is like, fix. But it's so broken. And it's a piece of it doesn't go back together. And the parts that will be able to go back together will never look the same that they were before they were broken. So, yeah. Like how and the Lord showed me that's how I love on you, Melissa. I enter your world right where you are. God enters into my suffering right where I am. He meets me right here, and he just loves me in my sin, in my suffering, in my sorrow, just loving on me right there in that spot. Yeah, and that is my primary goal for my teenagers. It involves entering their world and being with them in their stuff. That's a challenge too, friends. That's a challenge. That definitely requires me asking the Lord for large doses of his grace and patience to enter their world and love on them in their world, and to be patient and not try to fix this or remove this from them. The Lord also showed me to be aware that their world has changed forever. Just like my world has changed forever. Their world has too. They're stunned. Their heart home has been ravaged, and everything is suddenly upside down. So their life web is shaking. and there's strands that have been totally removed, you know. Most of this is eternal that goes on, you know, within inside of us. They may look fine, these teenagers. Perhaps not much different than usual even, right? I have a sinking idea that if people were to take a look at when they look at our teenagers, you don't see grief. You don't see sorrow. You don't see depression. You don't see that their whole world is upside down. But it is. So I must remember that as their mother, you know, remember that their world is forever changed. And inside, they're desperately trying to be okay. Even like me and my husband do at times. Their minds are struggling to grasp the impossible. Their world is forever different, but they can't process or feel that yet, especially the first year or so. You know, the first year or two of a grief of teenagers' life, I think it's just for ours, for sure too, it was just hard for them to feel all of that. Okay? At first, they're in shock. And I think the first 2 years they were in shock, just like we were, and still are. I mean, sometimes we just still look around ourselves and we just look at one another like, wow, what happened? You know? Shock, of course, can be a good thing, like I've talked about in my other videos before, and I did a video about shock. You know, it's designed to protect the teenagers from the full onslaught and reality of what has happened. And it definitely did for me, you know. So shock, I can see how that works that way. I just sometimes think maybe if we could fully experience trauma when it occurs, fully experience the entire trauma when it occurs, we would never make it. Yeah, we never make it. It seems in my experience, loss, trauma, death must be handled in small doses. One small step, one moment at a time. Because anything more than that is so greatly overwhelming. And thirdly, the Lord was showing me to prepare myself to be patient, you know, to ask the Lord for the patience with my teenager and with myself. Because I'm full of flaws too. And I don't always respond to things well. And it definitely seems like, you know, in our house, one person can be having a decent day and the other person's having their grief is really speaking loudly that day, or their depression. And so we will clash with each other within our household. Sometimes I wonder if that's God's grace as well. Because if we were all that way at once, maybe we wouldn't make it. And it's like each of us takes turn holding up another. Grief is a process, friends. It's not an illness. It's not a disease to be cured or fixed. And it's not an event or some type of activity that's going to end. Okay? It's the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual adjustment over the rest of our lifetime on earth to this loss. That's my opinion of grief. You know, time does not heal all wounds, but adjusting does take time. And I don't really like the word healing much in grief. I just don't, friends. You know, we have a different concept of healing, and it's more of adjusting. And continuing to love is our signs of healing and adjustment, that we can still love each other and love each other well. You know, and the Lord was encouraging me this, and I want to leave you with this, with what the Lord comforted me with. To know that your presence is the most powerful gift you can give your teenager. Your presence. You know? And the Lord is with us always. So with our presence comes the Lord. The Lord is with the child. Heaven is here with us. and our present. We're just there, you know. We meet our grieving teenagers where they are. So at first, they are stunned. So we got to take this into account when we are communicating with them, interacting with them, that they are shocked and stunned. And they're not on the same mental or maturity level as maybe some others in the household. You know, but we just need to meet them where they are, okay? And show up. Words are cheap, okay? If not, useless at this stage. And a lot of time in grief, words can be so cheap. And other times they are very invaluable. So, you know, yeah. Trust God to help us with that as parents. But I can already trust you. I've already said things at the wrong time to my teenagers. I have already, done the wrong thing at the wrong time, misunderstood emotions and feelings, and came at them from a different direction that they didn't need me coming at. So it's a lot of trial and error. You know, it really is a lot of trial and error. And, to know what works for that particular teen, and even maybe what might have helped them last year is not helping them this year, and even last week, even vice versa, you know. So we just need to be there. We don't need all these fancy tools, all these fancy resources all the time. We really don't, guys, especially in grief. We just need to be there. Just enter their world, just be there and love them where they are, you know. And our presence, it can sustain them through the shock. In fact, I think it's the greatest gift that we have to give them. You know, shock is natural and often healthy in grief. Okay? So we just meet these teenagers where they are and love them where they are. Yeah. It's difficult, teenage grief. Challenging and depressing. Ugly and messy. Grief is messy. It's very messy. It's messy for the adults, and it's messy for the teenagers, and it's messy for the children. Much so. But I believe this journey is really not meant to be done alone. You know, the grief journey is very lonely. It is so lonely. The loss is so personal to us. Yet it's filled with so many beautiful souls grieving like we are. Well, friends, I better stop. These videos are starting to get a little bit longer as the subject and just gets to be more intense. So God bless you for bearing with me, hanging with me to the end. And I do pray that this video encourages you in your walk and the life that you do with the teenager in your life and in your grief. So be well today, and I will see you on the next video.